Guys, I might have just created the longest handshake chain ever put together in history. One comment I seem to get a lot on this channel for whatever reason is Genghis Khan. Now, for those of you who somehow don't know, Genghis Khan passed away in 1227, over 600 years before cameras were even invented. And it got me thinking how I could even do this, and I came up with an idea. The original premise of the 6 degrees of separation was to put 6 handshakes between yourself and whoever you were trying to connect to. So what I've done is I've created the longest handshake chain potentially ever in history, and I've connected myself to Genghis Khan, who died almost 800 years ago. Let's connect. Okay, so we have Genghis Khan, who was the father of Tului Khan. Tului was the father of Kublai Khan. One of the people who served in Kublai Khan's court was a man by the name of Marco Polo. And for most leaders throughout history, you would have random guests pop by. One of those random guests was a monk by the name of Rabban Bar Salma, who just so happened to meet Marco Polo in Kublai Khan's court in 1287. Rabban Bar Salma left Kublai Khan's court and continued his pilgrimage all the way to Bordeaux in France, where he met Edward I, because that part of France at the time was controlled by the English. Edward I, or Edward the Longshanks, met Robert the Bruce many times in diplomatic meetings or even on the battlefield. Robert the Bruce was the father of David II. David II was the grandfather of Edward III, and Edward III's grandson was Richard II. At Richard II's wedding to Isabella of Valois, he met Joan of Navarre. Joan met Philip the Good as a result of French court diplomacy. Philip the Good met Charles VII in person at the signing of the Treaty of Arras. Charles VII of France was the father of Louis XI. Louis XI was in turn the father of Charles VIII. Charles VIII eventually married a lady by the name of Anne of Brittany. Anne of Brittany was once unsuccessfully courted by Henry VII of England. Henry VII was father of Henry VIII. Henry VIII was the father of Mary I. Mary I was the half-sister of Elizabeth I. Elizabeth I was the cousin of James I/6th. Not really sure how that works. James was the father of Charles I. Charles I was the father of Charles II. Charles II's mistress was shagarized by John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough. And John Churchill met Queen Anne as a military patron of the court. Queen Anne was the second cousin of and handed over the crown to George I. George I was the father of George II. George II was the father of George III. And George III was the grandfather of Queen Victoria. Queen Victoria was the mother of George V. George V was the grandfather of Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth II met the illustrious Miss Sally, and Miss Sally is my auntie. 32 steps, 800 years. I mean, you got what you asked for. Genghis Khan, right? That's what you wanted. I guess the next step is Jesus. Peace and have a good day.